What if I told you that the true potential of the Ferrari SF26 was revealed not by its engineers, but by Lewis Hamilton himself in just 5 days of testing? How is it possible that a driver who has just arrived has completely transformed the internal vision of one of the most legendary teams in F1? On Friday, Lewis Hamilton hopped into the SF26 for the final session. All week, attention had swung between the potential of the new McLaren MCL40, the ups and downs of Red Bull's RB21, and the improved reliability of the Mercedes W17. But just a few laps on soft tires were enough for Hamilton to completely alter the preseason script. He stopped the stopwatch at 1 minute and 16.348 seconds, a devastating record not only because it was the fastest of the 5 days of testing, but because it beat George Russell's previous best time by almost a tenth and left Lando Norris's McLaren and Charles Leclerc himself behind. That time was not the result of a light simulation or a particularly fast track. In fact, Hamilton achieved it in stable but demanding weather conditions, with slight crosswinds and temperatures that were around 22 degrees in the air and close to 34 on the asphalt. In other words, it was real weather without the effects of ultra-soft tires or suspiciously low fuel loads. And above all, he achieved it at the end of a day in which he had already accumulated 63 laps of technical work, which showed that this turn was not just instant speed, but the product of a growing understanding of the car lap after lap. The impact of that lap was not limited to the stopwatches. Internally, Ferrari experienced a reaction that could be described as disruptive. The track engineers began exchanging technical messages with an urgent tone. The telemetric data revealed not only a stable and fast car, but also one that was deeply understandable, predictable, and with room for development. The consistency of the SF26 under Hamilton's hands was such that many within the garage began to question whether they had underestimated the car's level of preparation. In the words of one of those responsible for vehicle dynamics, "We didn't know the car could behave like that until he got in." The most notable thing was that this technical revolution was not accompanied by media fireworks. Ferrari did not put on the typical media show to announce improvements, nor did it even publish a press release celebrating the time. The decision to use the soft tires in the final session of the afternoon was taken with absolute discretion. It was a calculated gesture, almost silent, but deeply symbolic. Ferrari knew what it had in its hands and wanted to measure it without interference. Externally, the paddock reacted with a mix of surprise and intrigue. Some teams began redoing their own benchmark simulations. Independent analysts reviewed estimated fuel loads, GPS plots, and long-run paces. And although some argued that there could be an aggressive engine map or a qualifying setup, no one could ignore that the SF26, at least in this test scenario, had done something that had not been seen in years, put Ferrari at the top without the need for excuses. And then the inevitable began to emerge. The media narrative changed. Hamilton was no longer the veteran who came to close his career in a romantic setting. Now, he was the architect of a potential technical redemption. Ferrari, far from being a sleeping giant, became a central actor with its own voice. And SF26 stopped being a question and became, at least for now, a forceful statement. 1 week was enough for F1 once again to realize that everything can change when Lewis Hamilton is behind the wheel. What happened during the second and third day of testing in Barcelona with Lewis Hamilton at the wheel of the SF26 was much more than a speed test. It was a silent disruption. The British driver, in his first full technical work with Ferrari, did not limit himself to interpreting the data that the car offered him. It generated them, structured them, challenged them. And the most impressive thing was that, by doing so, he not only accelerated the team's understanding of the car, but also caused a change of mentality within the Maranello technical department. From the moment Hamilton completed his first long stint in dry conditions, something began to change. It was a day without interruptions, with more than 85 continuous laps and a very clear focus, understanding the thermal, aerodynamic, and mechanical behavior of the SF26 in realistic scenarios. His work method surprised even the most veteran track engineers, accustomed to drivers who provide subjective sensations. Hamilton, on the other hand, provided correlations. It didn't say the car feels unstable. It said, at this rolling height, with this temperature differential in the left front tire, we lose traction for 0.3 of a second when returning to the gas. It didn't describe the problem. He located it and quantified it. Telemetry confirmed it. Hamilton managed to maintain his stable pace during 15-lap stints with a degradation of less than 0.18% per lap, an exceptional value considering the type of compound and the estimated fuel load. But beyond that, the SF26 revealed an unexpected capability: its behavior under highly demanding hybrid conditions. On several occasions, Hamilton employed aggressive power regeneration modes, MGUK, in corners where stability was theoretically needed. Not only did the car withstand the demands, but it also improved in traction. This forced the team to reanalyze the regeneration maps and update the planned limits for regenerative braking. In other words, Hamilton expanded the threshold of what the car was thought to do. The first effect was technical and absolutely decisive. The way the SF26 responded to Hamilton's input forced technical management to rethink priorities in the development schedule. Originally, the team had scheduled a downforce evolution for the European package, starting with the Spanish Grand Prix. However, after the results obtained in the tests, that roadmap was modified. It was decided to delay certain planned pieces to focus, instead, on refining the correlation between simulator and track, taking advantage of the window of precision that Hamilton opened with his feedback. This decision is not made lightly. It means that Ferrari has gained such a degree of confidence in its simulation tools that it can now invest its resources in more aggressive virtual exploration, accelerating the pace of updates without sacrificing reliability or structural coherence. But while the technical areas celebrated this turning point, sports management faced a more complex reality: the internal balance between its two star drivers. Because what Hamilton showed in Barcelona was more than speed. It was control, reading the car, depth of analysis, and an ability to lead the project from within. And that presence, however inevitable, redefines the competitive ecosystem within Ferrari. Charles Leclerc is not a second-rate driver. He is one of the purest talents of his generation, the face of Ferrari for more than 5 years. But after Barcelona, his position is no longer unquestionable. The comparative data between both pilots during the tests left no doubts. Under similar track conditions, with aligned fuel load and equivalent compounds, Hamilton was between 3 and 5/10ths faster in key sectors of the circuit. The most delicate thing was that this difference did not reside only in an explosive lap, but was sustained in long stints, race simulations, and configuration changes. Leclerc, accustomed to being the team's main technical reference, was at times out of place. And here emerges the central dilemma that Ferrari will have to manage: how to balance a duo of drivers where one is modeling the car and dictating the pace, while the other, although talented, tries to adapt to a dynamic that is no longer built around him. Leclerc is not out of the game yet, but for the first time since his arrival at the Scuderia, the car no longer bears his technical signature. The direction of development now flows from Hamilton, from his style, his demand, his precision. To what extent will Leclerc be able to adapt to a car that evolves with another philosophy? The second major impact was psychological and affected both the team and the F1 environment itself. The presence of Hamilton in red, and not as a ceremonial symbol, but as a driving force of a technical project, sent an unmistakable message to the paddock. Ferrari did not sign the 7-time world champion to capitalize on his image. He signed him to rebuild his competitive DNA, and that has begun to become evident much earlier than expected. Other teams took note. McLaren, Mercedes, and Red Bull have begun to analyze in detail the cross-telemetries that circulated through unofficial channels. What they saw was a Ferrari capable of competing at the highest level, not only in pure speed, but in consistency, traction, and energy efficiency. Some technical analysts suggest that if the SF26 maintains this progression until the start of the European Championship, Ferrari could be the team with the greatest room for improvement during the season, and that in a 24-race calendar can make the difference. But the greatest implication may not yet be visible in the data, but in the team's internal language. During one of the post-test meetings in Maranello, one of the senior engineers summed up the mood: "We are no longer reactive. We are proactive. And that's because of him." That phrase, without needing to mention names, says it all. The SF26 has not only proven to be competitive, it has begun to become a project led from the cockpit, something that Ferrari had been trying to recover for decades. However, with every advancement comes risks. Can Ferrari sustain this technical and emotional symbiosis between Hamilton and the Italian structure throughout a long and volatile season? Will internal harmony be maintained if Leclerc begins to feel that the car no longer meets his needs? What will happen when the first races arrive, where strategy decisions directly confront the interests of both drivers? The real challenge for Ferrari will not be to reach the top in terms of performance. It will be staying there without fracturing from the inside. Because now, more than ever, they have in their hands something that cannot be bought or simulated: momentum. The momentum of a car that has proven to be ready, and of a driver who has come to make it a champion. Leave me your answer in the comments what you think about all this.